So
Yeah,
one of the questions I
absolutely.
wanted to ask you is, we put a lot of this responsibility to improve bias and reduce bias on employers, right? Is there something that these other stakeholders or employees or job seekers should be doing to help with that? Is there a role for them
Yeah,
to play?
well, job seekers are unfortunately at the mercy of the employers, right? So
Right,
like job seekers, yeah, they can't do much. However, at an organization level,
right,
the organization can do several things, right? Like
yeah,
companies that we work with, a lot of them have unconscious bias training in effect. A
right,
lot of them are creating like talent pipelines from from like minority groups, and on top of that, utilizing like technology
right,
as an enabler. So, and that is extremely important, is to view like technology as an enabler for like positive change.
right.
And in our case, utilizing ethically built technology for like positive change, right? And just internally, I think this obviously has to come down from the C-suite, but
Right.
creating this awareness, and also generating communication is so important, just as part of any transformation. And then obviously, like once a tool is adopted, just
Right.
reinforcement of that is so critical to the long-term success.
Yeah, absolutely. Change management is huge, right? Otherwise, your stakeholders will go right back to what they were doing before you introduced any kind of
Absolutely.
change. Thing I want to focus on as well. You mentioned ethically built technology as an enabler. Would you please explain a bit more about how you ensure that at Knockri?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, there's a lot of transformation going on in
Mhm.
HR, and I'm going to give you a brief background. Actually, is when we take a look at the talent assessment landscape, there
Right.
are like three major types of assessments. There's a personality one, a cognitive based one, and a behavioral one. And
Mhm.
what Knockri is focusing is on behavioral. And why we're focusing on like behavioral is that personality has no correlation to success predictors on a specific job role.
Oh,
So
interesting.
if you if you categorize like somebody as a personality in the hiring process, in the pre-selection process, there's
Right.
no scientific correlation to like success predictor on a job role.
Wow.
Uh, in the case of a cognitive assessment, there's a high level of correlation. However, it is known to create the highest amount of subgroup differences, which
Hmm.
means that some candidates from lower socioeconomic statuses have not been exposed to those type of assessments, and they do poorly. So a lot of organizations for the past 10, 20, 30 decades have been utilizing cognitive assessments.
Right.
And by default, it's been kicking out minority candidates. And what else always ends up happening, especially in the US, that it's the Latinx community and it's the African American community. And so with a behavioral assessment is where, when you take a look at all the research from an IO psychology standpoint, uh, it has the least amount of subgroup differences. So we are eliminating adverse impact utilizing behavioral assessments,
Right.
and it has the highest correlation of like success predictors. So that's just the on the assessment side. And what we've done is that like we have objectively taken that science and
Right.
have fed that into Knockri. So we are not utilizing any human performance, as in human ratings,
Right.
because we know that training it on human data can actually
Mhm.
like bring in bias into the algorithm, right?
Right. It's garbage in,
And
garbage
train
out, right?
correct,
Right.
exactly. So making sure that you're objectively trained a model without human evaluation is so important
Right.
for you to build it out in a extremely ethical manner.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for explaining that even with an example. It's goes to show how we can even keep some of these things in mind, right? We even look to our historic behavior and say, well, how can I be more efficient? But are you
Mm,
leaving anything out because you don't know what you don't know and you've got your blinders on, busy with whatever
yeah.
you've always done it? Yeah, so that's
Absolutely.
amazing.